Welcome to the Maxwell Leadership Executive Podcast, where our goal is to help you increase your reputation as a leader, increase your ability to influence others, and increase your ability to fully engage your team to deliver remarkable results. I'm Perry Holly, a Maxwell Leadership Facilitator and Coach.
And I'm Chris Cody, Executive Vice President of Maxwell Leadership. Welcome and thank you for joining. Just as a reminder before we get started, if you want to download the show notes from today, maybe you have a future question or a leadership challenge that you'd like. Yeah. Perry creates all of our content. He definitely would love your help to have some ideas flowing his way. Please visit maxwellleadership.com/podcast. Even if you're interested in bringing one of our executive facilitators or coaches to your team and helping in culture, whatever that might look like, we would love for you to fill out that form and our team will follow back up with you. Once again, that is maxwellleadership.com/podcast. Well, I am super excited. Today's topic is work from anywhere best practices. This is an issue that is becoming very, very relevant. Matter of fact, John Maxwell has told me that the number one question that he gets now in all Q&As used to be, how do I work with millennials back in the day? And he's like, And now it has switched from, how do we handle this remote workforce? And people are working from anywhere. And not only am I excited about the title and where we're going to go today, but also that we have Joel Manby joining us for a couple of episodes. So I hope you'll not only listen to this one, but a couple in the future. And Joel is part of our thought leader team. And obviously for us, he comes to us, as a CEO of SeaWorld and author of Love Works and a bunch of stuff that's really important to us. But Joel, so grateful that you're here.
Thank you.
Welcome. Take just a second and tell our audience a little bit about your journey to here to Maxwell Leadership, maybe a little bit about your journey, just to get to know you a little bit better.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I grew up in Michigan. I'm a Michigan fan.
Yes.
And Chris is, of course, a Georgia fan, so we may face each other in the playoffs if we're lucky, but I grew up in Michigan. But from a career standpoint, I've been CEO of 4 different companies over a 25-year period. Basically started with Saab Cars, North America, and then went to an Amazon startup. We actually sold cars on the internet back in 2000 through Amazon. Yeah. Amazon used to sell cars. We had to sell that to our biggest competitor. Then I switched to theme parks and ran a privately held company called Herschend Enterprises for 15 years. We're most notably known for running all of Dolly Parton's parks. And she's just a fantastic lady. That's a different topic for a different time. And then finished up at SeaWorld and was involved in that turnaround. But privately and personally, I have a wonderful wife named Shannon and 4 incredible children. So that's the more important thing.
Yeah, we're glad you're here.
Well, I'm excited to be here.
Yep.
Well, I know that Chris and I just did a podcast not too long ago about a topic that came up. We get a lot of our fodder from TikTok, apparently. And somebody had coined the phrase productivity paranoia, that a lot of leaders are paranoid that people aren't in the workplace.
Yep.
They're not being productive. I told Chris I've seen a lot in the workplace that aren't being productive, but that's another podcast for another time. Yeah. You talk about this idea of work anywhere best practices is something that you've worked on. We're excited to kind of reopen that topic and say, what is it we need to know about work from anywhere best practices? Never heard about this.
Well, it came really out of necessity. As Chris and I have worked together on something called Executive Circle, where I mentor CEOs, and it's one of the great things about being part of the Maxwell organization, which I didn't address and I should have. I've always admired John and really wanted to join up with him in some way, shape, or form. But in teaching Executive Circle, we have 12 months of content, and it's over a year. And what I found is one of the key things people want, just as you said, John's hearing, is work from anywhere is just not working for people. Either the employees don't feel that they are being trusted or the manager doesn't feel trusted. So I came up through talking to CEOs, through reading, through just my own experience, kind of 5 best practices. And the first one is what I would say, communicate, and communicate. And as much as we all are kind of sick of Zoom calls, and I think we all have Zoom exhaustion, fatigue, it is absolutely critical that we keep doing that at least weekly with everybody. And I think this is intuitively obvious, but the research is showing it. When people leave or quit, they are filling all the silence. They're filling the gaps with uncertainty and distrust. If they're not on a Zoom call that they used to be on, or they're not part of a decision they used to be on, then they feel like something's wrong. They feel like
They're
their
being
leader,
left out.
Yeah, doesn't care about me anymore. And so as much as we tire of it, the main point is really, really communicate. And I would pay real special attention to people who are skipping calls. They used to be on, they're not there anymore. Or they used to be part of a decision when they were in the office, and somehow they're getting left out. Just really pay attention to who's on each call, who's not showing up. And for the main thing, no matter what, don't start canceling meetings because of fatigue.
It reminds me of a comment that I heard, I think it was from Andy Stanley, who is a pastor, dear friend of yours, where during the time as we began to shift into this remote workforce during the pandemic, and now I think it's going to be a blended approach for most organizations going forward. The statement was made, hey, your people, they just want to hear your voice. They don't care what you have to say.
Right.
And I think that is so relevant. I think Andy was on something there. I think where I was just going with what you said was, it's got to be the same way coming back, right? Like, leaders, you need to hear your people's voice. You may not really care what they have to say. You should, but just to hear their voice. And when you don't hear their voice, to your point, you need to be communicating, and checking in on them.
Give them a call, reach out to them.
And I know, too, and Perry, I'll throw it to you here in just a minute, in the executive circle, where we see an individual, an executive that hasn't made a call or two, you're the first one on the call to go, I didn't hear from him. I'm going to follow up personally with him and just stay engaged, because all of those we do virtually as well. So they can take those calls all across the world. And so just to be proactive about that, I think is extremely important during this time.
Hey, podcast listeners. Do you have a clear plan for growth? Achieving big results most often does not require big life changes. Small improvements over time compound into big results. Download the Maxwell Leadership app. It's the new free app where our expert guides and John Maxwell help you pace your leadership journey and set a clear plan for your own personal growth. You can also find all sorts of resources on the Maxwell Leadership app, including this podcast, information on upcoming events, and much more. Just search Maxwell Leadership in your app store and download the app today.
Well, and if you don't mind, what you just said leads perfectly into the second best practice, which is focus on socialization, camaraderie, and even mentoring. And I don't love this one myself because I'm not built to be a social animal. I'm a type personality. I'm
we
a
hate
driver.
it too, don't we?
Yeah, right. No, we don't. Yeah, we're the opposite. We're like, hey, is there a party? Yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
I don't tend to want to be on a Zoom call to socialize, but what we are finding, just to your point, is really important to interact with people, and it doesn't always have to be about this week's numbers or agenda. Now, some people and some organizations have tried a social call, like on a Friday afternoon. I've read mixed results. I've had mixed results when I do them, and I know the Max organization does a great job of that, like your Tuesday calls, trying to create some camaraderie there. But I don't think anything can replace just picking up the phone, saying, hey, I've missed you. I haven't seen you. What's going on? And because let's face it, I think mentoring, official mentoring, most executives don't have a lot of time for that. And so I think it's just really important to have those informal social gatherings, even though there's Zoom, and not maybe you as a leader don't feel like it's your best use of time.
Do you have a best practice for that? I mean, 'cause I know a lot of the leaders we speak with they think too busy to connect with others, but they know it's important. But do you just you force yourself, or do you have a routine or a?
The thing I've heard work best is a Friday early afternoon, like not at 4 or 5 o'clock.
Because no one's going to
show up. But just have something where the agenda is anything but business. Like this weekend, it would be, let's talk about the football playoffs. What does everybody think is going to happen? What's somebody's favorite television show? Talk about what have you, Yellowstone, the new Yellowstone premiere. And that allows people to relax and be comfortable. But having said that, I still think the best thing is, which we're going to get to in best practice number 3, is just to reach out to people frequently.
Let's go there. So best practice number 3, you say, is focus on performance evaluation and compensation to assure employees know where they stand.
Yep. And I'm going to focus mostly on the performance part because it is so important when people are remote, and again, they're filling in the blanks with the negatives, that we make their key success factors really clear. And whatever you want to call them, key performance indexes, or what I call them, KPIs. Make sure that's extremely clear, and make sure they know where they stand. But here's a really interesting tidbit that I've just learned about in the last six weeks here. A lot of companies are getting away from the annual performance review or the quarterly performance review, especially in remote work, because again, they're filling in the gaps, and it's not frequent enough. B, it tends to be too negative. And Cisco went away from quarterly reviews and annual reviews, and they switched to just an informal weekly phone call. They demand or request that every leader calls all the people who work for them once a week for just 10 to 15 minutes, and they have 3 simple questions. First question is, what did you love about the week? Second, what did you loathe about the week? And then thirdly, what can I, as your leader, do to help you be successful next week? And it's so simple, and yet their engagement scores went up 72% by eliminating quarterly reviews and annual reviews and going to this weekly phone call. So I know I think it's probably the best tidbit of all these 5 best practices, because you try to have as many Zoom meetings as you can. You try to socialize with them, but there's nothing like just reaching out. But the other thing that does that's so important is sometimes I see organizations where the CEO is trying to take on too much, or the senior leaders, to have all employee meetings all the time. That's not enough to really find out how someone's doing. So that weekly call with people who report for you is really, really helpful and really powerful. So that when we talk about focus on performance evaluation, it's those weekly phone calls. But the other question, I said those 3 questions, we should also ask how we are doing as leaders. So when we call our folks and we ask them how they're doing, we need to say, how am I doing as your leader? What do you need from me that I'm not giving you?
I like that. We tend to use a statement around that of, what's it look like to be on the other side of my leadership? And it's a creative way to say, am I leaving bodies in the wake, or am I ignoring you, or whatever it is? But I think you got to have those. And this is not intuitive for those that are leading bigger teams or executives, because to your point, Joel, when you think about the time, and now they have to do it virtually, and they got to get on a screen and all these things. But it is so important to be doing this. And the other thing I like about what you were just talking about, what Cisco's doing, is that weekly check-in keeps people from getting off course, even on a quarterly review. And I don't know how many of you are listening that loathe quarterly or even annual reviews, whether you receive them or do them, right? So this is a great way to say, I talked to Joel 52 times last week about his. We're good, right? We're in alignment. So I love that idea, for people to start engaging in that.
I was just wondering, we had hearing a lot about employee well-being, that the pandemic and people being away and not in the office and kind of feeling forgotten, maybe that their mental health or employee well-being was suffered. I wonder if that ever played in anything you've seen, as far as I like this weekly check-in that's not really business related so much as it is personally related.
I think it's a really good point, Perry, because I think it needs to be both. The 3 questions of what did you love about the week, loathe about the week, those are work related. But to your point, mental health issues are at an all-time high. people are feeling isolated. They feel alone. They feel like they're not being successful. And so I think one of those questions should be, hey, tell me really how you're doing. You know, everything okay with your family? Everything okay with you? Sometimes people aren't always honest to that question, but I think you bring up a really, really important point. This is not just about how are you doing from a work standpoint, but how are you doing, period. And
we skimmed over one of the things that I want you to unpack a little bit, and kind of your research and what you're learning with these different executives and senior leaders, where you said focus on performance and touch base with what Cisco's doing. But let's talk about this compensation word.
Okay.
Right? And where in the title we say focus on performance evaluation and compensation to assure employees know where they stand. The market out there, and it's shifting, it's moving, right, as we speak and as you listen to this. So it's changing every day. But there is a lot of conversations going around saying, well, I mean, you want me to come in, you know, half of the week, or you may fly in once a month, but, you know, Sally over here is staying home and she's making 10x or whatever, and it's all virtual. What are you hearing? What are the struggles? What are maybe even some of the solutions that you're hearing that leaders are working through around what's going on in the marketplace when it comes to compensation, and then the virtual part of being that, right? Because there's a value to that, and people need to understand that. But there's a lot of that going back and forth, and they're like, okay, hey, I'm out. You want me to come in? I'm out. I can go down the street and work, and maybe make a little bit more and be 100% work from anywhere.
Yeah. You know, it is very difficult right now. Now, I do think things are starting to shift. As we head into a recession, I'm not sure the quote, I hate to use the word power, but the power is with the employee right now. But at least from what I've seen so far, there's people or organizations, they do try to say if it's a remote job and you're choosing where you live, then they will pay geographically differently. So if you live in Oklahoma City versus San Francisco, you're not going to make as much. And if there's a complaint, you say, well, you're making the choice to live there. If you want to work in San Francisco at our headquarters and come to the office, we will pay you more. And that I see happening for sure. As far as people leaving because they're being asked to come in, I haven't seen research on this, but A, I think it'll shift, but B, I think the company has to do, and all leaders have to do what they think is right. If they think their culture is only going to work and the performance is going to be excellent by having people in 3 days a week, then I think you just have to go there and you let the chips fall where they may. Because if you back down on, because people say, well, I'm going to quit if you don't do this, that's not going to create a great culture. Yeah. And unfortunately, people are going to leave, and we're going to have some turnover. But we've seen, like, Elon Musk did it at Twitter.
Yeah.
Demanded that people had to come in. They're going to have a lot of turnover.
Apple lot is an understatement. Yeah.
Well, that's for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah, that's right.
Maybe a better example would be like Apple just did it. Google. My daughter works for Google. They just said 3 days a week you got to come in, and some people are going to leave, but I think we have to.
We have to. And the other thing, too, is maybe you're a team member and you're listening to this. You also have to understand the consequences on the organization, meaning you and I have been on an executive circle call with one of our leaders over the last couple of months, and they made an interesting statement. They said, oh, yeah, they're a very large organization in the state of Florida, and they said, well, we have a work from anywhere policy as long as it's in the state of Florida. And you have to understand from tax consequences and employee home base and all that stuff comes into play. It's not just as easy as saying, hey, my company is based out of Florida. I'm gonna live and work out of New York, and you should be okay with it. There are consequences that as a business they need to be aware of, and so you need to understand their perspective when it comes to having those conversations on both sides about compensation.
I'm so glad you brought this issue up, because it actually leads perfectly into the fourth best practice, which is clarifying expectations. And I'm sure you guys see it, and you see it in your coaching.
Yep.
What's rampant out there is confusion, and I'm not sure what to do. And either the employee doesn't know or the leader doesn't know. And what I've read and in my own experience and talking to other CEOs and other executives, things have to be clear. As Brene Brown says, lack of clarity is cruelty. And without clarity, there is not urgency, right? You got to have clarity. So first of all, what are the remote jobs and what are the jobs that are going to be in the office? And just define it. Some jobs can be remote, some jobs can't. If you're going to have a hybrid, be clear on which days are in the office, which ones are not. Organizations, to your point, Chris, are having a hard time putting their foot down. I don't believe that's the best practice. And also the best practice when they do say come in 3 days a week, they define the days. I know that sounds simple, but to me, to come in any of the 3 days you want doesn't give the synergy.
That's right.
Misses
I think it's great. I think that's spot on.
Yeah, they want to know. You said earlier about KPIs. So what am I responsible for? What am I accountable for? And then what are your expectations of me? If I know what our goals are, what you expect me to do, and what the standard is we work to, it doesn't really matter where I work.
That's
but if we have a
exactly right.
standard, then just tell me the standard. And people feel it brings a psychological safety almost to say this is how we do things here, and we're all good.
But you hit the nail on the head, Perry. Clear expectations, not only of the remote issues, but also what your job is and what does success look like. And I know in Executive Circle, I'm helping coach a CEO through that right now, and it's just really evident he doesn't have his team lined up for success, and they don't exactly know what their job is. So I think it's a really important point under clarify expectations.
Well, that takes us number 5, which is even, I think, kind of sums all this up, which is trust your employees are doing their job. Trust is a big word.
Well, you started with the paranoia on your last podcast. And again, some of this sounds intuitively obvious, but it's really tough to trust people when they're working remotely. But there's been a lot of research on this. And I'm not a research person necessarily, but all this software out there to try to control people, or like, when you're on your laptop, the company can see it, or when you check in, the company can see it.
We really have some maybe mouse moves.
Well, it's proven not to work. In fact, the U.S. government had one for their patent attorneys that they have. They tried to do that software where it can check them in, check them out when they're on their laptop. It didn't improve productivity at all, and it made everybody upset. Instead, back to your point on KPIs, they just said, how many patents did you approve in a week? And they changed to that KPI and trusted them, and the results went through the roof.
Wow.
So trust your employees, and when you don't hear from them, just as long as you had the KPI set up, like you said, they're going to be doing their job. Will you be burned sometimes?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. But as John in his philosophy, you start by trusting people and treat them that way until you're proven wrong. And, you'll be proven wrong now and then.
And then it goes back to the statement of that happens when they're in the office too.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
By the way, right? Like we have the same issue with what's going on there. Well, I think one of the things you can just hear as we talk about this, you can hear Joel's heart and the principles of which he's led by for so many years, public organizations, private organizations, smaller, larger, and all of that is in your book, Love Works. And I just want to remind those that are listening at MaxwellLeadership.com on the store there, you can grab Joel's book. It's an incredible book. Also, as we wrap up, this is an opportunity for us as leaders. We asked Joel right before we started, we said, Joel, are you enjoying being retired or like in this time? And he just said, man, leading in this time would be really hard.
Yeah.
There are all kinds of factors. And this is one of the things that we started Executive Circle for, was because Joel's passion is to be, he told me one time, being an executive leader, a C-suite leader, is a lonely place. Mm-hmm. And he understands that, and he wants to take that journey with him. And so a lot of this content's coming right out of what he's learning and having conversations with leaders around the world. And so if you're interested in that, and even just being a part of our next group at MaxwellLeadership.com/executive circle, we have a form there, and you can fill that out, and our team will follow back up with you. This is so relevant. We appreciate your time. I know you're coming back. We're going to talk about it a little bit more in the next one. But I would just encourage you guys, as you go back over the show notes that we provided for you, as you listen to our conversation, really begin to think internally, where am I struggling in these areas when it comes to leading a virtual team? And what do I need to put in place to become a more effective leader in regards to that? And just these 5 are very, very powerful. So, Perry, why don't you wrap it up?
Yeah, terrific having you with us. It's been a really a great, Chris said, very timely topic.
Yeah.
I think we'll get a lot out of that. Just a reminder, the show notes will be on maxwellleadership.com/podcast. I will put the 5 lessons we spoke about, also links to Executive Circle and to Joel's book. We also have a place there for you to leave a question or a comment for us. We always love hearing from you, and we're very grateful you spend this time with us today. That's all today from the Maxwell Leadership Executive Podcast.